Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 24 of Divergent Dialogues. Today, we will be talking about meltdowns. Oh, meltdowns. So in our last episode, we were talking about like alexithymia and emotional dysregulation and how that relates to autism and ADHD. So we felt like logically, we could talk about meltdowns in this episode. And like essentially a meltdown is, I guess I can speak from my own experience. It's basically like this massive pent up, like all these pent up emotions in your body that I guess need to be released in some way. And, in the context of alexithymia, sometimes it can be really challenging to, it's like you kind of, something's not right, but you're not quite sure. And then it's like something happens and it just hits the spot. And then it's like, bam, like everything at once. So, there's, intense feelings in the body. And but yeah, it's very much like around like emotional releasing those kind of emotions. And something that very commonly occurs for autistic folks. Sometimes what happens is people might be if they are late diagnosed, sometimes people might come to me and go, oh, I've been diagnosed with like panic attacks and things like that. And then we sit down and kind of unpack it a little. And it's like, I'm not sure if that's a panic attack. I think it might have actually been a meltdown. So
yeah. Or anger issues. People come along and they say, oh, I've got anger issues.
Yeah.
And yeah, when you go through that process of unpacking what they mean by anger issues and what that experience is like for them, it's the meltdown can be expressed with some of those descriptors that are found, in the space of anger, but it's coming from a place of meltdown as opposed to, misplaced and aggressively expressed emotions around anger. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I guess, meltdowns can be triggered by various things. So, usually it's like an accumulation of a bunch of things. And sometimes it's kind of accumulating. It might be over the course of the day, or it might be over the course of a week or a month sometimes. And, I guess it's just all those things that add up, sensory overwhelm, challenges with kind of interacting with your emotions and trying to process that, just the kind of stress of life. And, I think especially when you're feeling burnout, like I think a lot of people are more prone to emotional dysregulation and meltdown. So it's, it's really important to understand, I guess, your triggers, but also it can be tricky because there can be so many.
And they're not always, it's not always like bad triggers. Just recently, my sister and I took a trip to Tasmania for my birthday. Long awaited. We've been talking about it forever. And it was the best trip. I had so much fun.
But I saw the photos. So yeah, I can attest to that.
Yeah, and yeah, I didn't put all the photos up, obviously, but it was great. There's no complaints about the trip whatsoever. But ordinarily, a weekend away or a short trip like that would be a Friday, Saturday, Sunday type thing. This one, because of a great deal that we got, we went away on a Monday and came back on a Wednesday, and I knew that was different. It was a complete disruption to my routine. It was a complete disruption to my norm. What I wasn't prepared for was the meltdown that I had on the Wednesday night, and then it kind of carried on into the Thursday, because my whole routine was really, really disrupted, and I just didn't give enough thought to supporting myself with that disruption that I chose for myself. You know, I did that. I booked that trip. I loved it. It was amazing. All of those sorts of things. But yeah, a bit of an oversight, and I just didn't put enough in place to support myself to deal with the disruption of the routine and the emotional response that, as an autistic person, I have to that.
Yeah, no, I can definitely attest to that. As much as travel can be fun, it can be really hard. And you know, I think for me, whenever we go somewhere, it's the fact that every time you want to eat, you have to find somewhere to eat, and then you have to get there, and then you have to order it, and the menu's all different, and it's like too many steps and too many things and too many decisions.
Yeah.
And yeah, it can be really hard. And something that my partner and I have learnt that is helpful for us is that we like schedule like a nap in the afternoon, like a little kind of downtime nap
Yeah.
on basically every day. And it does help, but yeah, it's still yeah, it can be really overwhelming. Like and oh yeah, like the plane, everything. So
Yeah.
I guess it is important to acknowledge that. And, you know, and I guess like, I think that's why sometimes it might be confusing for the people around the person who's experiencing the meltdown, because from their perspective, they're like, oh, well, we're on holiday. Like, you should be happy, right? Like, so yeah, I guess that's why it's really important to, you know, if you do have an autistic loved one or child or, you know, what have you, and even yourself, like it's important to understand you know, how these things can you know, impact on you and your emotional well-being, so that you can kind of make sense of it, and other people around you can kind of make sense of it, and you and the people around you can support you, because yeah, it can be pretty full on sometimes. And I think like when it comes to meltdowns, it can be expressed in various different ways. You know, some people, they might have a more outward kind of expression of their meltdowns, but I find typically as people get older, it tends to be more like internalized,
Yeah.
because they're masking, and you know, they don't want to draw attention to themselves, or you know, whatever it is. So I guess the other thing to consider as well is that just because you can't see that someone is having a meltdown doesn't mean they're not. So yeah, that's really important to consider as well.
I think there's lots of words in the English language that have been sort of overused and subsequently diluted in their meaning. And I do think that meltdown is one of them, because you often hear people say things like, oh, they're just having a meltdown, when there is an outward expression of frustration, or often quite legitimate and reasonable, and the flippant comment of, oh, they're just having a meltdown, is often used to imply that the person is reacting or responding with unreasonable intensity. But like a meltdown in the neurodivergent worlds, in that space, it does kind of mean something for us. I like using the word, because for me, it, from a scientific perspective, I guess, it really does help capture what is going on for me, that it's a nervous system response, that I don't necessarily have this caused this and now I'm feeling this. I don't have that chain analysis, you know, drawing from DBT there.
My brain went DBT.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't always have that to be able to explain what's going on. And for for me, the word meltdown, it just really nicely captures that I'm having a moment, and it might be a really massive, big moment, or it might be on a smaller level that I'm trying to contain and prevent from getting bigger. But it is a nervous system thing. It might be a sensory thing, whatever it is, it's very real, and it can feel scary. It can feel like, if I don't have the right things around me, if I don't have access to the things I need, I've got no idea where this might lead to, because it can get really big, really intense, and it feels scary.
Yeah, definitely. And what you were saying before about the nervous system, it's really important to understand that autistic meltdowns, they're not tantrums. And it's actually a physiological response to what's happening. It's not a behavioral issue. People aren't, people that are having a meltdown, they're not choosing to have a meltdown. I can tell you right now, if there was a choice, they would choose the no option.
Yeah.
Like 100%. And I think sometimes, particularly with children, there can be this perception of, oh, they're just doing that because they're not getting what they want, or there's some sort of agenda going on. And it's like, no, this person is really struggling, and they need your support and your help.
And as an adult, a meltdown can sometimes be accused of emotional manipulation. It's like, oh, you didn't get what you wanted, or things aren't going your way, so you're going to throw a tantrum, or to make me feel bad and get what you want. But yeah, because like I've experienced that, like a meltdown, because I didn't get what I wanted, and it's not a choice. It was for whatever reason, I had expectations of the day, and they weren't met for various different reasons. Not my fault, not the other people's fault, whatever. But things changed, and I guess the meltdown came from a place of real disappointment, and like that was my response, and it's like, well, I just need a minute to let this happen, so I can then move that energy through my body and try and get to the next part.
Yeah. And I guess the thing is that as I said, like, if you could choose whether or not to have a meltdown, you'd probably pick the no. But the times, it's kind of like, if you sit down and think about it, it's like, well, like if I'm trying to, if I'm having a meltdown to manipulate, it's kind of like, well, how is having a meltdown, how is that going to influence like the situation? Like, as you said, like sometimes it's just, things just happen in life and no one has control over it. But it's really dysregulating, for an autistic person. And it's, so I think it's really important to acknowledge that physiological response.
I remember once I had a meltdown because something was going on with my hot water system, and I couldn't have a hot shower before bed, and that's my routine. And I absolutely had a meltdown. I was on the bathroom floor, and I was just sobbing because I couldn't do what I wanted to do, which was, I just wanted to have a hot shower. And I knew sitting on the bathroom floor, sobbing to myself, was not going to miraculously fix the hot water system. I also knew there was like nothing that anyone could do to fix the hot water system at that time of night. I knew I had to go to bed without having a shower that night. So the meltdown and the expression of that meltdown had nothing to do with trying to influence anything. It was just, I need to let it all out because I can't have my shower, and I just don't know what to do with that information right now, other than cry about it and try and re-regulate my nervous system.
And I guess, like, I would assume that having a shower is very regulating for you. So it's kind of like my thing that I do before I go to bed to regulate myself has gone. And that's very distressing. that's
Mm.
very distressing.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I guess when another thing that can occur when people have a meltdown is some people might become like non-speaking at the time. And, if we look at it from that, physiological perspective, and we think about it in the context of the nervous system, when our nervous system is activated, we are very much sitting in that limbic system, amygdala kind of space in our brain. And that part of our brain, that's the doer, I'd call it, that's kind of the doer. It's like instinct, emotion, reaction, reactive. And we're not sitting so much in the thinking part of our brain, so our frontal lobes. Everything's kind of redirected to that part of our brain for action, because when our nervous system is triggered, it's because there's a perceived threat and we need to get ready to get the heck out of there, or whatever we need to do, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, our way out of this situation. So in my mind, it makes perfect sense that a lot of people may find it difficult to be able to speak, because our frontal lobe is the part of our brain that helps us with language and forward planning. And I think sometimes what happens is that even when people they're trying to help and they're trying to be supportive, and they're going, oh, what can I do? What can I do? How can I help you? How can I help you? What can I do? And that actually is more dysregulating, because then the person's feeling frustrated because they can't necessarily communicate those things, and they're being asked lots of questions, which is really overwhelming. So it can be really important to, like, for some people, they might use communication cards or something like that, or having something in place in advance, so that if something like that happens, there's a way to communicate. But yeah, as much as as I said, people are trying to be supportive, sometimes it can be I guess counterproductive. And at the end of the day, because it is a nervous system response, like, regulation is paramount. So doing anything that can kind of help to regulate is really important.
Yeah, I think with becoming non-speaking when you're experiencing a meltdown, it can be really hard for loved ones to get their head around the fact that, well, you are quite an articulate person. You can verbalize things really well. So can you help me understand why all of a sudden now you can't speak? And it really is the words can't come out. It feels, for me, it feels like there is something around my esophagus and a voice box, and it's just like the words can't come out of my mouth anymore. And I often explain to people, it's like when you for me, like, it's because I've inhaled my own saliva and I'm choking. Something I do way more often than any human should. And you're choking, and there's someone there is always like, it's a natural response from people to go, are you okay? And it's like they expect you to stop choking and go, yeah, no, I'm good. Just give me a minute to get this saliva out of my airway and I'll be fine. Let me get back to the choking now. It's like, and then, like, but they keep asking you because you don't answer them. And it's like, are you all right? Are you all right? It's like, it's that's kind of what it feels like when you when you are struggling to speak, and people are asking you, like, is there anything I can do? What do you need? It's like, when I'm choking, I know that these people are feeling worried about me, and that's what's driving them to get mad at me for not being able to tell them I'm okay in the context of choking. But anywho, yeah, like, I know that they're worried about me and they're wanting to help, they're wanting to be supportive, and the only way they know how to do that is to ask those questions and get my input. But right then and there, I can't give that to them. And it can really escalate things, because when you're struggling to speak, or just unable, and you can see the people around you are getting frustrated because you're not answering their questions or you're not giving them anything, it can really trigger off more feelings of rejection and things like that, which can just really escalate things. So getting comfortable with things like communication cards and, like I really, really love the thermometer on the fridge, where it's just there. And, I like the idea of being able to simply just be like, with my kids at home, hey guys, I'm here in this zone at the moment. And yeah, it's just nice and simple.
Yeah, so is it like kind of a thermometer and it's like the green zone, yellow zone, red zone situation?
Yeah, and it's like in one side you've got some details around what's happening when you're in each zone. So like red zone is can't speak, or struggling to put things together, to verbalize things. And on the other side, there's some ideas of what I need. So red zone is do not ask me any questions.
Yeah.
Don't ask me any questions. Google is now your go-to parent. Do not ask me any questions. And just different things that I might need, and same for the kids. It's it's not all just about me. But having that can be really, really helpful, because you need different ways to communicate depending on where you're at.
Yeah. And I think like when it comes to meltdowns, it really is about being proactive, and getting support from someone to be able to map out your meltdowns, understand your triggers, understand like the best ways to communicate. Share that with your family and your loved ones. Figure out those strategies that you can use in the moment. But ideally, like in an ideal world, we want to reduce the meltdowns, stop them from happening if possible, or at least if you do get to that red zone, being able to regulate yourself back into that like yellow or green zone, a little bit quicker. So yeah, like problem solving during the meltdown for everyone involved, it's not going to be productive. It's not really going to be helpful. It's about how can we make this person as comfortable as possible. But like if you are experiencing a lot of meltdowns and that's something that you really struggle with, then like there are things that can be done to support you to communicate, to feel more comfortable, to regulate. And again, like you don't have to do that by yourself. It's okay to reach out for support, and that's something that we both do with a lot of our clients, to help them manage emotional regulation and their meltdowns.
And there's lots of things you can do, and it is about reducing the frequency, intensity. And I would love it if I didn't have to experience them ever again, but I'm also okay with knowing that you don't know what you don't know about yourself. And my next meltdown might be just around the corner for who knows what reason, because I didn't know. Like I shared the shower situation with you all. I've always known that I love my hot showers of a night, but until that day, I actually had no idea that how important they were in my routine. And I had no idea that not having access to a hot shower would cause such a strong emotional response and reaction. So it's not about saying to a neurodivergent person that here you've been given these tools, why are you still having meltdowns? It's because you're not trying hard enough. Your next meltdown might be a surprise to you, where it's like, here is a strange gift to help you learn something else about yourself. Have some dysregulation and meltdown, and then go and enjoy some reflective time to figure out what that was all about.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. But yeah, you're completely right. And I think that just goes to show how unique these experiences can be to each and every person. And yeah, you're right. Sometimes, a lot of times, sometimes it is kind of this trial and error. And yeah, it was probably only recently that I was like, oh, hot shower, that helps me to regulate, because I have one in the morning before I go to work, and then I have one when I get home from work. And
Mm.
yeah, it does. It just like helps me to regulate. And I'm like, okay, cool, I'm ready for work now. Or, okay, great, I'm finished work now. I can kind of relax. And it does, like, it relaxes my nervous
Yeah.
system. And if I don't have that, like, I'm like feeling like on edge and tense and all these sorts of things. And, as autistic ADHD is, like, our at a baseline, our nervous systems are super sensitive. So,
Mm-hmm.
it can be really, there's a lot of discomfort in the body when you don't have access to those things to help you to regulate.
Yeah. Or you're staying in some hotel that has really bad water pressure and a terrible hot water system, and you have to have a drizzly, lukewarm shower. So, oh, okay, this holiday is not going to go well.
Oh goodness me. Yeah, they need to put that in like the Airbnb. Like, what's the water pressure? What's the heat or whatever?
Well, you can't trust the response though, because I do.
Yeah.
You know when you Airbnb something and you're forced to have those interactions, like you have to message the host straight away, like that stresses me out.
Yeah.
So now I've come up with this nice little blurb to ask questions about water temperature, water pressure, and internet access. And but you can't trust their responses. We
Yeah,
stayed in an
that's true.
Airbnb once where it was told to me that we have good internet connection, when I discovered the internet connection was actually terrible.
Yes.
Um, they told me it's because the wind was blowing in the opposite direction. I'm like, okay,
Okay.
yeah, okay.
Like,
Same. That was the same Airbnb that ran out of water completely as well. So it was just, yeah,
just
disastrous.
blatantly lie to you, and just, yeah, wow,
Mm.
interesting. Anyway. Um, but yeah, I think, yeah, meltdowns are really hard. And again, much like we were talking about in our last episode, about emotional dysregulation, like sometimes during meltdowns, we might do or say things that we're not particularly proud of. That can lead to, a lot of those feelings of like shame and guilt.
Yeah,
And, that can be really hard. But again, like, if you're going to see someone who is neurodivergent affirming, has a lived experience, like ourselves, like Teena and myself, we've been there. We understand these challenges, and we're not going to judge. And again, as I said, there is a line in our, how we treat others. But also there does need to be empathy and understanding, when supporting someone to be able to, reduce those meltdowns and to regulate. And,
yeah,
there are things that can be done to help with that. But yeah, so it is hard, and, and it's brave to kind of go and seek help and support for that, and to be honest around some of those challenges.
yeah. I agree, and yeah, we can't start to do things differently if there's so much shame in the way that we can't have conversations about what's going on for us. So yeah, finding a safe space where you can tell someone the things that you've said and done that you aren't proud of. It's a really life-changing experience to feel safe enough to say, yeah, this happened, I said this, I did this, and I don't want to do that again. So
Yeah.
can you help me figure out what it was all
Thank you to
about?
everyone for joining us for this episode. If you enjoyed this episode, check out our other episodes, and hopefully you'll tune in for the next one.